am Tara. This is my mom, Jill. And today we're talking about moms. You need to stay at home. Now, this video came about because our last grocery audit was a stay-at-home mom with a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And she had 4 daycare kids between 1 and 6, if I remember right. Also, and she is exhausted and overwhelmed. And frankly, she's just losing it. She's absolutely losing it. I mean, and I've been back and forth with her since the video, and she's told me a few other things that are going on top of all of that. And I told her, I said, you cannot sustain this, period. You cannot sustain this. And so she said, well, yeah, well, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. And it's like, no, you cannot sustain this at all. And so I had a little get it together, Laura moment with her. But so I thought tonight I was going to do Q&A about some of the things that people commented on her video. But then I got to thinking, you know, this is more of a stay-at-home mom video, because the problem is we have gotten to a point in our society where daycare is not a last resort. It is daycare or stay-at-home mom, and they are on an equal plane. And we're here to tell you they are not on an equal plane. Okay, now that we've just ticked everyone off, feel free to go ahead and leave. But this is the truth, and this is what needs to be told. And the problem is there are very, very few people telling it. It has been 50 years since the feminist revolution has taken over, and we see the consequences of 50% of the moms working and not staying home raising your kids. And I'm sorry to start out harsh, but if your kids are being sent to daycare, you are not raising them. 2 hours at night, 30 minutes, an hour in the morning, compared to the 12 hours a day that they're awake, is not raising them. It's not. Now, let me address something really quick that came up in Facebook as we made the announcement. Every single post started with, oh, well, it should be a stay-at-home parent. I'm okay with that. Or, well, stay-at-home dads are fine also. Oh, it's okay if the dad stays home too. The answer is no, it is not. Okay, so Mike, my love, is going to address this briefly, because it is not okay for dads to stay home unless it is an emergency situation. Yeah, they're widowed or divorced or something like that.
Something like that. Mm-hmm.
That is a totally different situation.
Before Mike says anything, guys, keep your comments. Don't give us the exception to every rule. We're not talking about all the exceptions here. We're talking on an average, the normal type situation, because people tend to want to keep bringing up all the exceptions to not try to make an argument about it. You can't argue the exceptions.
Yeah.
You just can't do that. And we're not going to argue the exceptions. So keep it to just like a normal situation.
We're talking about a 2-parent, normal family. Yeah. Both people are healthy. There's not disability on the husband's part or anything like that. We're talking a normal 2-parent family situation. Okay, so Mike, let me here, hold on. Here we go. Mike, how do you feel about the statement that that dads can be stay-at-home dads just as well as moms can be stay-at-home moms. What is your
We'll get the male
reaction to
opinion
that
here.
first?
No. I think that no, it doesn't work. Guys just aren't wired that way. And it's funny because there's a point where I was thinking, oh yeah, that would be fine. And I've had friends that thought that, and some of them actually did it for a little while, and they just couldn't handle it at all. Because guys just aren't wired to do that. Guys aren't wired to be the caretakers and to stay home. It's like a gift that the moms have. And if you're a guy and you're a single dad, I would say that it's kind of like being a single mom in the sense that if you absolutely had to do it, you could, but it just wouldn't be the same as if a mom was doing it.
Yep. All right. So let's just get that out of the way. Dads, unless it's an extenuating circumstance, do not do as good of a job staying home with the kids as mom does, period. You can argue it till you're blue in the face, and you're not going to convince me. I have seen way too many times where it's been experimented with and a total flop. Now,
I was just going to also add, it creates a weird dynamic because like the wife will want eventually the guy to be providing some support there. And if it gets all out of whack, then she gets resentful of having to be the one to bring in money, and he gets resentful of having to stay home, and he wants to go out. And I mean, guys are like, it's like go out and hunt, go out and get out of the house. I mean, I know women want to get out of the house too, but it's just what I would say is you could start that way, but when things get kind of backwards, then everybody gets upset with each other all the time. And it's a problem that's hard to get out of once you're in it.
yep. Okay. So, okay. So here's the thing. It's in society today, it has become mom shaming. We're mom shaming by saying you should stay at home instead of work. We're talking down to women. We're going back to the Stone Ages. All of those comments when we say, as a mom, if you decide to have children, you should stay at home. Now, really, this begins before you even enter college. Now, I know that's being very, that's putting a lot of pressure on 16, 17, and 18-year-old girls to decide this before they even go to college. But there are a lot of girls who already know they want to be a stay-at-home mom when they grow up. They already know that. But society and school pressures these girls into going to college because what if something happens? Now, if you have the money and you don't have a boyfriend that you're planning on marrying or something like that, and you want to go to college, I have no problem with that as long as you do it and you're totally debt-free doing it. Totally debt-free. If your parents' retirement is funded and they want to pay for your college, okay, that's fine. They can go ahead and do that. If you're working or get scholarships and you want to go to college, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. I don't have a problem with women going to college as long as it's paid for in cash. And that goes for men too, but college needs to be 100% cash, okay? If you're going to do this. Because what's happening is these girls are going to college. They're spending 2 or 3 years in college, find the guy they want to marry, get married before finishing their degree, have $80,000 in debt. 1 or 2 years into the marriage, they decide, oh, we want to have a family, and they haven't paid off their debt yet. So mom has to keep working because she has all this college debt that she cannot pay off now because of her college debt, technically, it's not her college debt. If you're married, it's both of your college debts. But they feel guilty that they wasted all this money and now they have to keep working to earn their keep for their college debt that they paid. So first of all, if you have daughters, my daughter's age, well, younger than my daughter now, I guess. But if you have younger daughters, you need to help them. If they have decided, you know what, I want to be a stay-at-home mom and I'm going to be good with that. You can say, you know what, you're not married yet. Why don't you go to vocational school and get some training? I think it's fine to have training. You never know when your husband's going to get sick or disabled or die. And then you may have to work. And that's totally fine. But it's also totally fine if they want to get married. Now, on that same realm, you need to make sure that you're expressing to them that this guy needs to be able to support you. If he's going to be sitting at home playing video games all day, this is not someone you want to marry, because this is another big problem. And so starting at the college level, first of all, if you're in that age group, by some weird chance you happen to listen to this, then know that it's okay to make that decision even before you've met a guy, that I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. Then as you are looking for a husband, yeah, well, that's what I was getting ready to say. Then as you are looking for a husband, you need to make that specifically clear that that's what you want to do for your family. You expect him to provide and you are going to stay home and raise the kids. And you need to make sure those expectations are out there. Now, the other thing is don't go just jumping on the bandwagon trying to just desperately find guys either. Wait until you find a guy that is actually worth dating and worth being husband material. Okay, I know I'm going to get all the comments. Well, you're just being judgmental. But before you get married, you need to look at the traits in these guys and see what kind of a guy you are marrying. I don't know how many single moms that are divorced are like, well, you know, I will never forget one of my friends. And she was like, well, my husband's on their wedding day, 15 minutes before she was getting ready to walk down the aisle, her husband slammed her up against the wall and put her in a chokehold. And she continued to marry him. And then she was wondering why she was miserable and on the verge of a divorce with an abusive husband. Listen here, ladies. You see the signs before you marry them. Don't give me this baloney. Well, I had no idea he was so sweet. I have not met not one abused wife that has told me she had absolutely zero sign before they were married that her husband wasn't addicted to porn, he wasn't verbally abusive, called her names, slapped her, hit her. He was always going to change.
Well, even not just physically horribly abusive, but how does he treat you? You know,
Are you paying for your dates?
yeah. Does he open the car door for you?
Does he
just
compliment
talk
you?
to you nicely and kindly? Does he thank you? Does he say please? Does he have basic good manners? You know, even they don't even look at those things because they're so used to a world where those things aren't happening. So they don't think that it's out there.
And let me tell you, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
Mm-hmm.
They're showing you who they are. Don't sit there and act like you had no clue. And you're going to be like, well, Tara, if you're divorced, how can you be a stay-at-home mom? My point is, this all starts early on with setting out expectations. And most of our viewers now have daughters that are in the 18 or 15 to 30-year-old range. And if they aren't married yet, as mothers, you need to be telling them, set your expectations high. Now, you can't set them so high that they're not achievable. No man is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be ridiculous. But if he doesn't open the car door for you, if he doesn't treat your family nice,
if he doesn't take your arm because he's worried that you're going to step on a patch of ice,
if he's not sitting playing if he's sitting and playing video games on all of his time off, instead
and ignoring you,
of working to improve himself,
or
to get a
you,
better job. These are all signs. And so part of the problem with our society is that the feminists have convinced everyone that men and women are equal. We are not equal. Sorry, I got news for you. We are not equal. Men have completely different talents and attributes than women do. Totally different. They complement each other very nicely if you stay in your specific roles. But the problem is the feminists have gotten people so messed up now that it's a cuss word for you to say you should be a stay-at-home mom. If you decide you're going to have children, you need to stay home and raise them. Sorry, you need to. It is not the same. You are not raising your kids if you put them in daycare. I am not talking about, I know there are extenuating circumstances, single mom and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you decide you want to have children, you need to decide that you're going to sacrifice yourself to raise them so that they have the best life possible and they're just not shoved off into daycare for their entire life. Let me tell you, when I go pick up my kid from school, there's a busload of daycare kids that comes from school to the daycare, and it is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
It is so sad. It really is. It actually makes me physically ill to my stomach to see that bus pull up every single day. It's just horrible. All right. So Mom's got something to say about the women's lib because you went through it.
Well, everything Tara said, it's very interesting. I did go through it. And it was so funny because I was married in 1970. I mean, we were right in the middle of the women's lib stuff. It was.
Let me say something just a second, just so I can address this. I am not saying also, real quick, Laura, our lady that we inspired this, or any daycare worker.
Oh, yeah, no.
Are bad people
No.
or anything like that.
No.
I am not saying that.
Mm-mm.
But I will tell you, as a parent, they do not love you the same way
No.
you love your own kids. We had a family member who had their kid in daycare, and it was so bad. The abuse was so bad, they ended up on the news. Yet the next week, they just put them in another daycare.
Mm-hmm.
You hear story after daycare workers that are negligent and kids die. But you don't hear about them on the news very much.
They don't want
I'm
to.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to promote that. Why? Because the government needs women earning the money for all that tax revenue coming in. And I'm not saying that daycare workers in general I think are very loving, caring people. And I'm not saying that at all. But as a parent, you need to know they do not love your kids the same way you will love your kids. Sorry. Now, go ahead.
Well, yeah,
we're
and that's
already
true,
getting comments
because
on that.
even
so.
a mom, when she's got 3 or 4 little ones, she gets tired and she'll get irritable with her kids, but you still love them so much. And a daycare worker, I can't even imagine if she's got 6, 7, 8 kids getting tired, and she doesn't want to be unkind necessarily, but she's going to get tired, and she's not going to react quite as lovingly to those kids as what she would. She wouldn't be abusive necessarily, but she's tired and she can't give as much, as what maybe a mom can.
And in this day and age, I'm sorry, if you don't think that you can be a mother, there are plenty of ways to not do that. There are plenty of ways.
And you're not talking about abortion either.
And I'm not talking about an abortion. Mm-mm. Listen, sex is not a human right. Sorry, it's not. But if you're not going to take measures to prevent pregnancy when you don't think you would make a good mother, then you shouldn't be doing things you shouldn't be doing. I'm just diving in.
I want to expound on that.
First of all, hold on just a second. Diana Dime cookbooks, 25% off right now. Guys.
You honestly think if you spell the word, it's not going to sound, it's going to sound better?
25% off our cookbooks right now in the description below.
I taught you not to be afraid of that word.
Okay, well, I didn't know a lot of people had their kids watching,
I know. And
so
we're
just
trying to be careful
delicate
here. We really are trying to be delicate. But I didn't give Mike the link on this. Can you hold this up so they can see the title? This is a little booklet, and it was written in 1970, okay? I was married in 1970, and I tell you, we think it's bad now. It was worse then if you were a homemaker. I would go to conventions with my husband for different things, and there would be 3 or 4 women standing, and we were all talking, and they say, well, what do you do? And they'd give the name of where they worked, this type of thing, and what do you do? And they'd come to me, and I would probably say, I'm a homemaker and a mom. And I'm not joking. Every single time, there would be dead silence. You would think I'd said a bad word or something. And they would say, then all of a sudden start kind of chatting slightly, and they'd walk away. It was like I was the lowest of low. I mean, I'd never seen quite so much snobbery before in my whole life as I did at that time in my life when I'd mentioned that I was a homemaker. Even the way they looked at me like I didn't have a brain in my head. And what's so funny is I think I've made kind of a success of my life in spite of being just a homemaker, and some of them have fallen by the wayside. There's nothing wrong with that. And so as a matter of fact, I was thinking about this today. I thought, why is it that we can have a teacher go to work and get paid for a job and she's respected? We can have a chef go to work and get paid for a job working all day cooking for somebody, and he gets paid or she gets paid, and they're not only respected, they make TV shows about them. Somebody can be a house cleaner or a housekeeper, and we still respect them. And somebody can be a horticulturist. They can work at a gardening center and run a gardening center. Oh, wow, that's wonderful. They get paid, and we're very impressed about that. And yet I could name off job after job like that, just all these different jobs. And yet a mom and a wife stays at home, and she's a teacher. She teaches her children all day long, helps them with their homework, does all this type of stuff. She's a chef all day long. And sometimes she has to do it on a very tight budget. She is, what else did I mention? She works in the yard, does yard work. She nurses the kids if they're sick. She has to nurse the kids and stay home and nurse them. She does all of these jobs put together without pay, and yet she's treated like dirt. But if she was doing any one of those jobs out and getting paid for it, she is so highly respected. Does nobody else see there's something wrong with this? That just doesn't even correlate? How did we get so messed up? And I remember in the 70s when they started doing it, it was a nightmare. And I had made up my mind I was going to be a wife and a mother and a homemaker. I longed to be that all my life.
Thank you, C. Miles, for that super chat.
Oh,
She
thank
said, "Thank
you. And I longed to be that. But you know what? I made up my mind. I didn't care what the other people said. Thank goodness I guess I was strong enough that I was going to do that. But hold this up so they can see. This is a little tiny booklet so they can see the title. You can look this up online. Type in, it's Theyre Caldwell. And maybe we just have to read it to them. The old-fashioned
The
way.
title is Women's Lib, They're Spoiling Eve's Great Con by Theyre Caldwell.
Yeah, it's called They're Spoiling Eve's Great Con by Theyre Caldwell. I have never, this will blow your mind. It's just, 4 pages long?
I was going to say, do we have time to read it? But we're not time to read it.
And it blew, and what's so ironic, she wrote this in 1917, and she said, this is what's going to happen in the future. And every word that she wrote in this thing has come true. Every word she predicted came true. It's just like she said, this is what's going to happen if women keep up doing like this and believing this and listening to these lies. This is what our society is going to do. And this is what, and she was right on target, because when Tara was talking about knowing the man before you married him, she told about her life. Her mom told her all her life, anything a boy can do, you can do. Anything a man can do, you can do. And she said, yeah. She said, my mom expected me to haul the coal in for the fire. My brother didn't have to. But she said, you can do it, just like if a boy can do it, you can do it. And when she turned 15, her mom said, if a boy can work at 15, you can work at 15. And she went into the factories, and she was starting to work in the factories. And she became toughened up like a very tough person. And then she went on to college, because if a man can do work and go to college at the same time, you can do it. And she went on and do that, and you can find a job in a position. And she said, you know what happened to me? She said, I watched the other gals, the other girls who were kind of, their dad protected them and their brothers treated them, they were treated with respect. They weren't expected to go out in the cold and shovel the snow. They were treated like a woman and a little girl should be treated, like a delicate flower kind of, even though women are tough. We gals, we know that we're tough, but it's nice to be treated and cherished. They were cherished by their fathers, by, their boyfriends and stuff. She said, I wasn't cherished. I was expected to do this stuff. And when I grew up, and all I longed for in my heart was to marry a man that would cherish me and protect me and provide for me and nourish and I could have children that I could nourish and love and take care of. And she said, what did I attract? Because I was tough and I was smart. I'd been to college and I could do this and I could do anything a man could do. She said, I attracted these men that were losers. They didn't want to work. Why should they work? I could work, And so they clung to me like a leech, she said. And that's who she ended up marrying. And they expected me to work hard and take care of them all the time. You see, God designed us. He was so amazing. He designed men and women to complement each other. And when Adam and Eve sinned, God told Eve that she would be, have pain in childbearing, and that she would submit to her husband. Why? Because God knew that most women have a rebellious spirit in them. They don't want to submit. And so that was punishment for sinning. The man had to work by the sweat of his brow, hard. Why? Because men have a tendency towards being a little bit lazy. You know, if they can cabbage on to a woman that'll work for them and make more money than them and take care of them, they're going to do it nicely, but they're going to, why not? Why wouldn't they want to do that? And so God knew what he was doing, and we've taken and we've just totally messed it up. And a good deal of it is women's fault. I'm not putting it all the blame on the women, but we've allowed it to happen, and we've listened to women's lib.
Yeah, and listen, I stop and wait for my sons to open the door for me. When I come home from the grocery store, I tell my sons, please go out and get the groceries for me. I make my sons drive me up to the door and drop me off.
And do you know what my grandsons told me just Sunday? Today's what, Wednesday? On Sunday, they were riding home with me from church. And Jack was saying, he said, Nan, he was talking about the girls in his class and the boys in his class and stuff. He said, those boys, they don't know how to act around those girls. And he said, they don't treat them very nice. And he said, I keep telling them they better start treating these girls nice, because none of them are going to want to go out with them or aren't going to like them. And he said, they won't open the door for them. They won't do this for them. And they won't do that for them. But you know what, ladies? It's your fault. How often do you say to have these young gals said to a guy, what do you think? My arm's broken. I can open the door myself. That's what this booklet was talking about. And she said, you keep doing that long enough and guys aren't going to get up and give you your seat on a train anymore. And even Jack mentioned that, you know, about getting up and giving a seat to somebody. And we're training. We're supposed to be raising our sons to do those things. And we're failing there. On top of that, they're going to daycare. A daycare worker doesn't have time to teach them those things. The daycare worker is just there to watch those children enough to keep them from killing themselves and to feed them. She doesn't have the time or the energy to do all this extra. But when are you going to teach them to do this, moms, when you're only with them for a couple of hours a day? And I started when my grandsons, and with my son too, when they were like 3 and 4 and they couldn't even hold the door open when we'd go someplace because it was so heavy, I'd say, you need to open the door for Nan. And I would have to, on top, pull it for them. Their little chests, they would puff up so big. Their chest would just puff out. They were so proud of themselves. They felt so good for doing that for me. You're denying your sons that sense of confidence and good feeling, you know, that my grandsons do have. And so that's why I wish you guys could read this and understand how seriously we have messed up with our twisted minds and the twisted stuff that the dumb mantras we've been given, you know, of doing that.
Oh.
And did you have something?
Nope. Let's take a commercial break, guys. Dining on a Dime cookbooks, 25% off right now. Volume 1 and Volume 2. Do you know why I wrote this? I will tell you why I came up with the idea to write this. Because in 1997, I was on a chat board with other moms who were first-time moms, and none of them knew how to save money on their grocery bill. It is still common today. They didn't know how to
cook either.
They didn't know how to cook. They didn't know how to shop. I kept giving them advice, and I'm like, I'm going to write a cookbook that teaches these moms how to make oatmeal, how to make rice, how to make dinners that you're not spending 5 hours in the kitchen with 50 different pans, getting all dirty. One pot, one dish, quick, easy meals to get yourself in and out of the kitchen.
How to be an organized homemaker.
Get it together. 25% off right now, but get that book. The thing is, this is not hard. You can learn it. Most of the women now have not learned how to do this, but there are plenty of places. Go look at our old videos. Our top videos are our old ones where we say how to clean a burnt pan, how to fold a fitted sheet, of course, is our #1 video. those show you how to do these basic things. Don't be lazy, and you can do it. And we're going to talk about lazy stay-at-home moms also. So go ahead and finish.
Well, and two, you need to teach your daughters. We're talking about teaching your sons. I don't know, over the years, we've been doing this, 25 years now? I get so many comments about how my mom worked. It always starts out, my mom worked, and I never learned how to do fill in the blank, clean the house, cook, do the basic homemaking skills. I didn't learn this because my mom worked. And I kept getting tons of these comments like this, and thanking us for doing our videos and for the posts I put on the website. And you know what? In all those years of tons of these comments, I've only gotten 2 that were really, they said, well, my mom worked, but I still learned how to do this stuff. I just went on YouTube and I figured it out myself. So you can still learn how to do that stuff. And it was a very cocky attitude. But if you think about it, I had 2 comments out of all the tons of comments I've gotten. Most of them were, my mom worked and I never got to learn any of this stuff. And that's when I talk about the exceptions to the rule. Don't throw out the exceptions there, because they're not really worth anything, because they are an exception. You know what I mean? And another thing too, ladies, you've got to, this is kind of transitioning over into another semi-topic like thing, but I was thinking the other day about a lot of women work because, how do I want to say this? They work because their husbands maybe don't want to work. And it's not an open thing. He doesn't say, well, I'm not going to go to work. But my father-in-law, he was kind of this type of man. My mother-in-law had to work 6 days a week for at least 12 hours or more a day. And my father-in-law, he kind of worked in their store a little bit, but he had his hobbies to do. And he just he would go out and do work on something, but he'd spend like 3 hours visiting with the people, sitting down, drinking coffee and visiting while she was at the shop working. And there's a lot of people out there that say their husbands are doing the same thing. And, wives a lot of times start working part-time. They think, well, I'll just get a part-time job to help us over this hump, to help us get our debts paid off, to help us do this. And be very careful, because once you agree to start doing that, it opens up another whole can of worms. And that doesn't mean women should never do anything, that you can't do certain stuff, at home. I'm not saying that. That's another subject that we might touch tonight. I'm not sure, but if we'll have time. But you can't once you give in and start doing that, it's going to be hard to back out and not get that money anymore. And your husband's going to relax more and more. He's not going to work as many hours maybe, or not earn as much money. And I'll tell you why, ladies, you have to be careful on this, on you coming up with a solution, how to provide for your family. When women think they have to be the ones to figure out how to provide for the family or help provide for the family, it messes things up royal. For any other type of thing, when women think they need how to do this stuff more than their husband. For example, if you think about it, Eve went to Adam and she said, look at here, Adam, this good fruit, eat it. It'll make us be something good for both of us. It'll open our eyes up. We'll be like gods. And she took the fruit to Adam. And Adam, no offense, guys, being a typical guy, happy wife, happy life. Oh, okay, dear. Guys do listen to their wives, whether it's a negative or a positive. And he took it and ate it. And look what happened to the world. Sin came into the world. From that point on, things went downhill. Because Adam convinced, Eve thought she knew the solution. She knew what would be right for their family. And she shouldn't have done that. Abraham and Sarah in the Bible. God promised them a child and she wasn't having a child. So what does she do? She tells Abraham, I've got a brilliant solution. I'm going to figure this out for us. and take care and provide a son for you in a way that's not pleasing to God. And here she gets her nose in there and steps ahead of God. And Adam goes along, oh, yeah, sure, dear. I would love to have your handmaid. And then we can have a son. Look what that did. To this day, Israel and the Iran and that are still fighting from that one thing that Sarah did. So be very careful in taking the reins over, or being pushing your husband in different ways. Let him be the provider. Let him come up with the solutions and stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about stay-at-home moms who do nothing all day long but sit and scroll on their phone. Okay, so now in the midst of all this, let me say that first of all, your husband needs to be providing an adequate income. Okay. Now, I want to give you a few numbers here real quick for all of you working moms. Where did it go? Mike? The banner, the pictures we put on here? Oh, under brand? Okay. Okay, so for all of you working moms, let me put this in perspective. Now, let me just say, I was extremely lenient on my numbers. I went on the very low end for my numbers because I know from grocery audits and everything people have been telling me, actually, these numbers are a lot higher than what I'm putting in here, okay? So I was extremely low. But look at this. If you make $20 an hour, which I'm sorry, the majority of moms who are working are not making six-figure incomes, okay, first of all. But let's say you make $20 an hour times 40 hours a week times 50 weeks a year, that's $40,000. Then you take away 25% in taxes, that's $30,000. Then you take away $800 a month for one child in daycare, that's $20,400. Then you take away $700 a month for car payment and gas. That's $8,400. So now you're down to $12,000. Then you take off $100 miscellaneous for office gifts, etc. I think that number is very low. I was very lenient on that.
Clothes.
Now, clothes, all of that. $10,800 is what you have left. $200 a month eating out because you're just too tired to cook. $84,000, or now we're down to $8,400. Sorry, I added an extra zero. It's $8,400 is what you're down to. Then you take off $300 a month for convenience, grocery, because you're just too tired to cook. So you buy all the Lunchables and all that baloney. You're down to $4,800 a year. $4,800 a year divided by 40 hours a week divided by 50 weeks. That's $400 a month, or $2.50 per hour. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. I am serious. It is absolutely, how do I get myself back? Can you get me back, Mike? I had a moment and now it's all gone. But you need to let that sink in.
And before you continue, Tara and I did this separately. She didn't even know I did this. I did the numbers too, except I did the old-fashioned way on paper, and I came up with the same thing.
And I'm being very lenient.
Yeah, I did too.
I know the convenience foods and the eating out alone are way more than that for the average person.
Yeah.
For the average person.
And there's a lot of other little things that I didn't add into it too. That
it is way more than that. And $800 a month is just one end for the low end of daycare now for one child. If you have two children, you are not even making any money.
We've had people actually, after listening to us, went and got serious and really sincerely wrote down every number. And they came
every expense.
and they've said, she wasn't making money. They were paying her basically.
She was paying.
She was paying to work.
Her
Yeah, that's what I was
husband
trying to
was
say.
paying for her to work.
Yeah.
By $10,000 a year. He was taking $10,000 out of his income for her to work. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. And, I always say put pen to paper. Why people do not figure this out and think it through, because we just follow along with what everybody says. The wife has to work. You need to go to work. You need to live on 2 incomes. They've had that drilled into their brains since they were in school and told over and over. So they just, like a zombie, blindly go along and follow the crowd, what they're telling you to do. Guys, these are the last days. God says we're going to be deceived. And it's not just in churches that we're going to be deceived on things. We're getting deceived in everything, every area of our life. And this one, people are getting deceived in. And so you need to write this stuff down and figure out, these numbers.
All right. So let's talk about these stay-at-home moms who are sitting scrolling on their phones, getting their nails done, shopping, and all this baloney. If you're a stay-at-home mom, that is your job.
Mm-hmm.
That is your job. Now, I am not sitting here and saying, for all of you who are going to comment about this, because I know you are, I am not sitting here saying that if you are a mom with 2 or 3 kids, 5 and under, that you are to get up from 5 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night when they go to bed, because they better be going to bed at 7 o'clock to have a decent bedtime. Between 5 and 7, if you are literally going all day long, you are expected to go all day long without any help. That is not reasonable. Your husband needs to come home from work and help you with those kids in the evening. That is reasonable when you have new babies, toddlers, and young kids. But once the kids start getting into school, if you're not homeschooling, which you probably should be now, but that's a whole nother show. But if you're not homeschooling and your kids are gone, you need to be cleaning the house, keeping it organized, and getting the meals prepared so there is food ready. You should work 8 hours like your husband is working 8 hours. Now, your 8 hours may be divided up differently. You may work 1 hour in the morning getting everybody ready, 3 or 4 hours working on the house, shopping, getting groceries, working on dinner and all that. Have a break for a few hours. And then in the evening, you have to do a little bit more while your husband is resting. But you had your resting a few hours before in the afternoon. Okay? I'm not sitting here saying be a doormat. When we had little kids, when I was a stay-at-home mom with little kids, when Mike came home from work, he helped out with the kids. If I was giving them a bath, he would do the dishes. If I was doing the dishes, he was giving them a bath. He didn't just sit on his butt watching football when we had little babies and toddlers. Stop.
Mike's.
Here, go ahead. Okay, pat yourself on the back, dear. Go ahead. Go ahead. Do it now. We are wasting. Very good. Very good. I am not saying be a doormat. These husbands who don't help their wives out at all that's abuse. To expect your wife to be working from 5 to 7 with babies and toddlers, and he comes home and sits on his butt and does nothing while you're doing all of it. Now, the next thing is your kids need to be in bed early. Your kids need to go to bed early so that you and your husband have time in the evening to rest and recuperate so you can make it through the next day. Okay? So, when you're a stay-at-home mom, you better not be just sitting on your phone or your computer playing games all day long. It is your job to organize the house, keep the house clean, keep food on the table, get the kids to and from school, and do all those things that help a house run smoothly. It is your job to keep your home in order and peaceful as much as possible if you have little kids and toddlers. But, our house, I would have a huge mess, but my house was never such a pit that literally in 20 or 30 minutes, Mike and I and the kids that were older couldn't get it all picked up in time for company. That's how you should keep your house in running order. And I get sometimes dishes will pile up and all that, but you shouldn't have 5 days worth of dishes ever piled up. Even when you're sick, you have to be Little House on the Prairie sick, where they were out in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors, all laying on the ground, not able to take care of them, sick. Nobody is ever that sick. And so keeping your house in order is your job.
Well, and one thing too, what my husband did was he would get up and he'd say, okay, kids, come on, let's get the table cleared for mom. Or come on, kids, go in here and he would be observant and he would say, let's get this done for mom, or let's help mom do this. He was teaching them as in the evening, as including helping me, that the respect for me, not just respect for me, but that taught them to have respect for other people, to help other people. We're falling down on the job on teaching children these basic emotional and spiritual things that they should be doing. The kids aren't learning them from home. Mom and dad come home exhausted from work. It's like, let's just get the laundry thrown in the wash machine and start going and slap something on the table, get the homework done. Everybody's tired. Everybody's mad, stressed, screaming it back and forth at each other. And they aren't being able to be taught the way dad should teach them, the way mom should teach them. They don't get it if they're in daycare all day, but there's basic things like respect. And he showed that to the kids, that he'd take them into their bedroom and say, okay, now let's get your bedroom cleaned up so it'll be clean for mom, and he'd always talk like that. This is for mom. This is to help mom. And he was showing his respect for me and teaching the kids to do the respect, and that type of thing. Another thing too, I wanted to say is I always push that a stay-at-home mom, you need to treat your home and your homemaking like a business. Start thinking of it as a business. Okay, what would happen if you slept in till 10 o'clock and you just called your employer and said, well, I just slept in, and you drug in and told your employer, well, I slept in late. You wouldn't do that if you were working at a regular job. No, you'd get up. Would you wear your pajamas to work? Of course not. You get up, you get dressed. Treat it like a business. Do everything you would do in the business. Would you just toss the paperwork with the receipts and the bills just any old place and just ignore them and put them in a pile? No, if you had invoices you had to take to your boss, you would make sure you kept them in a file and took care of them. You would be there to supervise the employees if you were a manager. If you're not home, you're not there to supervise your kids for anything. If you are late working from work, you just got to start acting more like it's a business and check the sales for groceries. You don't.
So are you going to go into how to save? Because I have what I was going to say before we do that.
No, but you can go ahead if you want.
Well, you can go ahead and finish if you had something.
Well, it's like when I was running my business, my piano business, I had to check the best prices and figure out the best prices to buy stuff so that it can keep the business going, well. And so you need to do financial things like that to make sure. And that's why you need to put pen to paper to figure out, is it worth it for me to go to work? And most of you haven't treated your life as a mom and a wife and a homemaker like that, because you just thought, well, I got to go to work because my husband's sick or off work for 6 months. So I got to go do this. My husband was off October, November, 4 months. And I didn't ever once think that I needed to go to work. It wasn't my responsibility to find a job for him or have a job to cover him. And there are circumstances where, yes, you need to, and that's not what I'm talking about. But go ahead. What were you going to talk about?
Well, okay. So now for the husband's part, when we say it is his job to be the earner, there in this state, this is not the 1920s depression. I don't care what anybody says. There is absolutely no reason why anyone who wants a livable wage without the government stepping in, raising minimum wage, those are not living jobs. There are plenty of living wage jobs. The internet has opened up an entire world that if you really want to have a good paying job, you can do it. And when we are talking about the husband supporting the wife and staying at home, I'm not saying he has to make $250,000 a year, but there's no reason any man can make $70,000 to $100,000 a year now. And any family with 4 or 5 kids even can easily live on $70,000 to $100,000. Now, the thing is, we're talking a $10,000 to $15,000 car is a reasonably priced car. I'm talking clothes at the thrift store. There's no reason to have new clothes.
And if you're not working, you can take the time to go do that stuff.
I'm talking buying your groceries on sale, using ads, eating your leftovers, cooking from scratch, buying things like cheese and crackers instead of Lunchables, turning your heat down to 68 in the winter and turning your AC up to 78 in the winter or in the summer. All of those ways are ways you can save money. There's no reason for you to expect your husband to earn for an extravagant lifestyle. You should be able to pay for all your medical and dental needs with $70,000 to $100,000 per year. Now, maybe if you're living in New York City or LA, you're not going to do that. Then you need to get your butt up and move. Sorry, you're just going to have to do it. If you can't afford to live where you're living, then you're just going to have to move. But we're not talking extravagant lifestyles here, women expecting their husbands to pay to have their nails done every week or their hair done, bleached, dyed, whatever, every month. That's not reasonable expectations for an average family.
Tara mentioned this is not the Depression. And I was thinking about this. One thing that I find is happening that I did, but I don't see people doing it as much anymore. And that is, we're not willing to sacrifice anything. We're just not willing to sacrifice things, give up things. We want comfort things. We want things that taste good, that feel good, that make us comfortable. And when she mentioned the Depression,
well, we want to build our self-esteem. Let me tell you, a toddler pooping all over your living room doesn't exactly build your self-esteem. But guess what? I did it 4 times. Why? Because I cared more for my kids than I did for myself.
Well, and I saw this movie. I've mentioned it before. I think it's called Cinderella Man. I'm not sure, but it was about, and it's based on a true story, and it was about a boxer, and it was during the Depression. And one scene stands out in my mind on this movie, and that was the mom was up that morning, and she was fixing breakfast. And he was going to go out. It was still dark. He was going to go out to try to find a job. Mom wasn't working, but he was going to go out during the Depression to try to get a job because they were so scarce. He had to go in the dark to stand in line. But when she was fixing the breakfast, all what she had to fix for them was she fixed a bologna sandwich. And she cut it in 2 and gave it to each one of the kids. And then she made another bologna sandwich, and she gave it to her husband, and that was going to be his sandwich, his meal, for food for the day. And he went to kiss his daughter goodbye. And he said, "How you doing, sweetie?" or something like that to her when he went to kiss her goodbye. And she looked at him and said, "Daddy, I'm hungry." And he looked down at the sandwich in his hand and looked at her, and he handed her his sandwich. And he said, "Give part of that to your brother too." And he was going without his one meal for the day. And, I've been listening to people for years now, And they say, well, I don't want to give up my special coffee. I have to have this kind of creamer. I'm lactose intolerant, so I have to have my soy milk. Heaven forbid you just don't eat any or drink anything with a dairy product in it. And sacrifice having all the normal foods. I have to have organic. I can't eat preservatives. And here was a man that was giving up his meal for the day so he could take care of his children. And we're not willing to give up any of those things so mom can stay home and take care of her children. I'm thinking, what has happened to us? What are we thinking?
We're a bunch of selfish twits is what's happened to us.
I had to go without any kind of coffee for months, and I didn't think anything of it. Why? Because I had a choice of taking that money and buying me some coffee or buying bread, milk, and eggs to feed my kids. I mean, I just am appalled how, I have to have boneless, skinless chicken, and, I can't eat anything but boneless, skinless chicken. And here was a dad that gave up his bologna sandwich, of all things, for his child.
The problem with America is we have not had a true depression or true financial problems
generations now.
For almost 100 years now.
Yeah.
It has been almost 100
years.
years.
Prosperity for years.
Well, okay, we'll give you World War II. Well, it's been almost 80 years since we have had any type of real financial problems to where we've truly understood what it's like to not have money. Americans for the last 80 years truly have no idea what it's really like. They don't have an idea of what it's like to not have money.
Mm-mm.
Because they're so used to going and mooching off the food banks, mooching off of churches, mooching off of family members, instead of figuring out how to cut back and save on their own. They won't do it anymore, or sacrifice on their own. This is why we're so hard on people who go to the food banks and their hair is done and their nails are done and they're driving a new car. Listen, honey, if you weren't getting that stuff done, you wouldn't be having to go to the food bank now.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is.
See, we do these things and we don't realize there's going to be consequences for being irresponsible with our money. There will be consequences. And when those consequences happen, instead of sucking it up and figuring out, I blew it and I messed up, so now I'm going to have to work harder and figure out something to do about this, we just want somebody else to fix it for us and make our consequences better. But I'm sorry, in the end, it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you no matter how. Even if you go to the food bank and you messed up and you think, well, I just want the government to do this, it's going to come back with you. With children, your children will watch what you're doing and they'll become selfish and self-centered and they'll stay at home and not get a job. Why? Because mom and dad expected the food bank to take care of us or the government to take care of us. So why should I go out and work? So you're harming. These consequences are passed down to the next generation. And so that's what's happening to us. We've had several generations of this.
Yep. Dieting on a Dime cookbooks, guys. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you don't know how to cook, volume 1 is where to start. Volume 2 is the companion. They are totally separate recipes. Start here if you don't have either one. And then our gluten-free, dairy-free edition right here, guys, if you're gluten-free, dairy-free like me. And our undated planners to help you get organized, 400 pages, 365 days, 25% off all of our cookbooks right now at livingonadime.com. All right, are you ready to get to comments and questions?
Can we do this?
Yes. Go ahead.
I don't think you realize, most women realize how important being a homemaker is. Let me give you 2 quotes here. They're from Grace Livingston Hill. It says, this is what she was talking about in there, and that a mom, a wife and a mom, homemaker is. And it's to make pleasant for those to whom she's been given. In other words, she's to make her home pleasant for those to whom she's been given. Are you doing that? What's the stress level in the evening when everybody gets home from work? Is everybody just tearing their hair out all the time? And you and your husband are fighting constantly. The kids are fighting. This other quote is, home without a woman, it's a shell. Home without a woman is a shell with its spirit gone. And I want to tell you, I know the difference between having a mom that was a stay-at-home mom and having a mom that had to work or that went to work. She didn't have to. She just went to work. And it's very interesting. Kids are so intuitive and sensitive, and they can sense these things. They know if dad's died and mom's a widow, or dad is left and mom's alone. They understand when mom has to go to work, and they try to step up to the plate and help mom and do that. They understand. But when a mom's going to work just so they can have a new pickup, just so they can have nicer furniture, just so mom can have her nails done, they know a difference in that that's something more selfish that they're doing. And the kids can sense that, and they'll act up and behave differently. And my mom went to work not because she really had to. It was just at the time they were told that if your kids are in high school, go get a job outside the home. It's okay to do that. But you know what? I want to tell you, your kids need you more almost when they're in high school. When they first
have
get married.
mercy if that ain't the truth.
They need you.
This week alone, my son's school in 7 days had 5 different activities that all the kids were going to. I was like, seriously.
It's a different type of thing, but they need you. Your kids need you when they leave home. And I saw a commercial. It's really cute. And the son went off to college, and he said, oh, he won't be calling us again. And it was like 10 minutes later, Dad, where do you think I should stop and get gas? And then 20 minutes later, Mom, do you think this place is okay for me to get groceries? And he was on the phone constantly. They need you. When your kids first get married, they need you. Those grandbabies come along. I had 2 granddaughters, both that almost died when they were born. My kids needed me to help take care of their homes, the other kids that were in the family when that happened. So don't think that just because your kids go to high school, you're no longer needed and it's okay to get a job. But my mom, I would come home from school and the house was always bright and lit up, and my mom was there and she'd give me a hug, and I'd sit down and I'd start telling her everything about happened at school that day. The house smelled so good. She was usually cooking supper, or she had cookies made. The house just smelled so good. And it was so nice. I couldn't wait to get home and tell my mom about what had gone on that day. There was physical needs met, there was emotional needs met, and even spiritual needs met when I went home each day that I had been depleted from, and it had been taken away from me when I was in school. I needed my mom. Kids, their whole world for the first 10 to 11 years, you guys don't realize those kids need you. They want only you. They don't care about the teachers and the other kids at school or anything else. It's you. You're their world. You're the one that makes them feel good. You're the one that makes them confident. You're the one that makes their world right. And she went to work, and I was in high school, older, and I came home day after day, and it was cold, and the house was cold because she hadn't turned the heat up too high because nobody was going to be home. And she'd close the curtains at night before we went to bed, and when we were in the living room, and she didn't have time to open them in the morning. So the house was dark. And I walked into this dark house, and it was cold, and it had kind of a stale smell to it. I had nobody to talk to, nobody to tell what happened to me that day. And I just sat down and did my homework and did my chores in this quiet, dark house. And it was so different before, it was so different. And I don't think a lot of people have seen the difference to compare. Well, my mom worked and it didn't bother me.
It did. You just aren't.
You don't
Admitting
you've
it.
never noticed the difference. Maybe you've never had it
Yeah.
to compare to anything. I had it to compare. And when I say those kids are your world, I had a lady say, make a comment. She said, well, those kids need to be from a young age put in soccer and these activities to socialize them. That, I'm going to use Tara's term because this upsets me so much. It is a lie from the pit of the hell that you guys have listened to. Those kids don't need to go to another school activity and play soccer. They would rather be home at age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, sitting eating popcorn, watching a funny movie with mom and dad and laughing, or playing a card game with mom and dad and laughing and joking. My husband and I would sit at the dinner table, and when he'd get off work, and we'd sit there for an hour. Can you imagine a family sitting for an hour talking and eating with the kids? And they had fun. We had fun. We laughed, we joked, and had lots of fun. And I think that's half the reason, even though I had to come through all the awful things I did with my husband later years, I think that's
ex-husband, just for those of you wondering.
I think that's why the kids were more, it was hard on them. I'm not going to say it wasn't hard on them. They didn't have issues they had to deal with. Every child does when they go through divorce and stuff. But they came through it better and dealt with it better. And years later, when they got married, knew what a marriage was supposed to look like years later, because of those years when we had that type of stuff. We weren't shipping them off to have a coach scream at them that they needed to do better, to have them have an audience of people, parents out there saying, hit that ball, hit that ball. Those kids, I know family, well, I know more than one. This is just one example. They would have 3 kids under the age of 7 in soccer and t-ball and all this kind of stuff. During the school nights, they would go 3 times a week to these sports games. One week, they had 2 things of games where they had one child at one game. They had to hurry and get the other child over to their game, and they didn't get home until 10:30 at night. 3 nights in a row.
And then you wonder why your kids are upset and cranky when you go to the store with them.
And tired all the time, or not getting good grades. Why are they not getting good grades? And you've got it all goofy. You think that's socializing them and that's going to help them? They learn manners. They learn to socialize with mom and dad first. Then by the time they're ready to go into middle school, or about 11 or 12, then it's time for them to blossom out and to start interacting and socializing more with kids their age and that type of thing. We've got it so messed up. No wonder our kids are just spending all time as vegetables on the computer, on their phones, doing all this weird stuff. And so, but I've got this book, and I want you guys to make a comment right away if you can. And this book is When Queens Rides By. Michael put the link in it.
We've got it for free for you guys for the next 24
We
hours.
got it for free. Now, I want to show it to you here, because look at this thing. It's only got 3, I don't know why my hands are shaking. Oh, I'm hungry. It's got 3 pages. Now, are your children worth 3 pages to read? It took me 10 minutes. As a matter of fact, I was going to read it out loud to you because it's so short. But I want you guys to make comment. We have a lot of people that have read this because we've recommended in times past. We get emails and comments saying this thing changed their life, changed their marriage around. They looked at the world totally different. Reading, can you imagine reading 3 pages? And for those of you that aren't Christians, this isn't this doesn't talk about God or the scriptures, although first of all, that's where we usually go to. But it's just a short story written in I think it was like 1930, like during the Depression. And it's about a mom that worked day and night, hard labor work, because she thought that's what her family needed. And you'll be so surprised at the ending. It'll bring you to tears. I was reading it again yesterday and I was crying over it. Every year when my kids were at home, I drug this little thing out in January. I didn't make resolutions. I read this thing, and that inspired me, strengthened me, and made me more determined to be a good mom every year.
It's Queen's Ride By. We'll put it in the link. It's free for 24 hours. Mike, when you send me the questions next time, I think you sent me all of the questions.
And if you've read it and liked it, pop in there and let the people know if you don't mind, so they really understand. It's free. It'll take you 10 minutes and it might change your life, or at least give you some ideas or a direction to go in.
I think you sent me every single comment.
Oh my.
And so I'm having to go through and delete, but anyway, okay. So if you could just pull just the comments or the questions that are, okay. So we are going to get to some comments and questions here because you guys have a lot of things you want to say. Louise just paid off your house. Good job.
Good job.
Nicholas
That's
just
so
saved
exciting.
$1,000 a month for 10 years and now has $120,000. Very good.
Oh my goodness, you guys, that's a great start.
Edifying says, feeding my family of 9 for less than $5 tonight, thanks to our cookbook.
Oh, you're kidding.
That includes meats, vegetables, and starch.
Oh my word.
Good job.
Very good.
Amazing Grace says, Tara, our Christmas music started this morning on the Christmas radio station. If they say it's too early for Christmas music, you just tell that person we don't need that kind of negativity in our life. It is never too early for Christmas
I'm
music.
glad you mentioned that because I'm going to turn over now and find
Cindy
it.
says, I loved when I stayed home. I guess it's not for everyone, but when I had to work, I was miserable. Trouble is a lot of husbands insist that their wife work. Then wives, why aren't you insisting that you stay home? Sorry.
And
just say no. No, I'm not going to work.
This was another thing I was going to mention. Talk to your husband. One of the biggest problems is communication in a marriage. And if you cannot talk these things over and really seriously talk to each other about it and come to a decision together that you're both comfortable with, you've got more marriage problem than you have anything else. But just talk to each other. I don't know how many times I've counseled people and I've said, have you told your wife this? Have you told your husband this? Well, no. Well, you shouldn't be telling me. You need to tell them what you're feeling and what your needs are.
Katie says her neighbor said that her daycare was for 2 girls costs more than their mortgage.
Oh my word.
That's just ridiculous. Vicky says my daughter is a high school teacher. Her 3-year-old goes to daycare and we keep her 11-month-old since birth. Okay. If she stayed home, she loses her years to gain her pension in 24 years. Okay. I'm sorry. As a grandparent, I am not going to babysit my grandchildren so that my daughter-in-law can work because my kids want to have fun things and new cars and nails and stuff. It ain't going to happen. If there's some sort of a medical emergency or something like that where they need help temporarily for a few months to get back on their feet, that's one thing. I don't know how many grandparents are babysitting their kids and the daughters or the daughter-in-laws are getting their nails done. They're getting their hairs done. They're not shopping ads. They've got the newest iPhone. They're driving a car with a $700 to $1,000 car payment. No, it is not your responsibility, grandparents. You raised your grandchildren. It's not your responsibility. As for your daughter losing her pension, she should have thought of that before she had children. I'm sorry, 24 years she has to work to get her pension? That's ridiculous. Sorry. Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. Your pension is more important than your child? Get over yourself. I'm going through these comments and my head is about to explode. The amount of selfishness that you women have for your jobs and your pensions.
For your own security.
Tie your tubes and sterilize yourself if you don't want to have kids and take care of them. You can call me judgmental. You can call me harsh all you want. I don't give a darn tootin' care one bit what you think about me. You are tossing your kids into daycare for a pension that you're probably going to even be dead from the stress of being a teacher for 24 years. Oh my goodness. And the grandparents are enabling it. No. Sorry, ain't going to happen. Grandparents, you're enabling this just as much as you're just as much in the wrong as your kids are when you're enabling it. Sorry, Vicky, love ya. Don't mean to jump all over ya, but this is the truth.
But this is what's happening now. Everybody, this.
But 24 years means 80% of the career is still left.
You need to be on camera. Go ahead.
I was just saying to Tara that if there's 24 years left to get the pension, it means you've only worked, or she's only worked 20% of the job necessary to get the pension. So is it worth working 80% more of a whole nother career for that? Because like I worked at a university, I saved up some retirement and I could have stayed there for 20 some more years to retire. But at the time, it wasn't working out for us to do that. And I left the job and we just said, we'll just have to lose that. And we did get some of that money back. But it's, at that point, if there's something that's more important, it's not like you've worked 80% of the career and you're about to be flushing the whole thing. It's only 20% of it. So.
Okay, and let me address another thing here. Well, you're just trying to guilt us into staying at home. We're trying to enrich our lives and enrich our careers, and we want to be a whole person. You know why you're feeling guilty? You're feeling guilty because you are convicted of your sin. Wrong. And it is sin when you dump your kids in daycare and you are not taking care of your kids the way the Bible has instructed women to do. The Proverbs 31 woman did all of those things. She worked and all those things. But guess what? Her family came first.
But you know what concerns me? I don't think Christians realize that Satan's number one thing is to destroy our children. You know, I don't think you realize that. From day one, look at Moses. What happened when Moses was born? Pharaoh was killing all the male children. What happened when Jesus was born? Herod was killing all the male children under 2 years of age. Over and over again, the Israelites were sacrificing when they did pagan religions. They sacrificed their children in the pagan religions. Constantly, Satan is trying to destroy your children. Abortion now. Let's kill our children with the gender thing. Let's destroy our children. And you know what? I think the biggest thing that we've been blinded to is this women's lib stuff that you can have everything and you need to fulfill yourself and you need to go to work and you can still have kids and you can do the job and you can work and have kids and do all these things. That's another way that Satan has deceived you into thinking this, and you're destroying your children by believing these lies. And I don't think you understand that, how serious this can. No, I know how serious it can be. I've seen 3 generations now. 3 generations getting destroyed worse and worse and worse till we're up to this last generation. And look what's happening to it. It's these things that we're seeing happening in our schools and all this garbage that's going on. That's happening because my age group was told that we should go to work and that we can have it all. And this is what it's done to our children and our grandchildren. And we're seeing the results of it.
Brittany says, it's nice to hear Tara say this because I feel so guilty and like a loser for wanting to be at home with my daughters. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop feeling guilty for being a
That's
stay-at-home mom.
false.
That's your
false
fault.
guilt. Yeah, that's false guilt.
Be proud of what you
Mhm.
are doing. Be proud of the job that you are doing and do it the best that you can.
Never
Keep
never
your
feel
house
guilty for that.
neat and tidy and in order. I get with little kids, it's harder. But you know what? We had 40 people at our house last night for a party. And guess what? Mike got up and did a half an hour's worth of cleaning. I did a half an hour's worth of cleaning, and the house was completely spotless again. And our house is back into order. Why? Because as a general rule, we keep our house in order. We don't let it go to a pit. I don't let it go to a pit. I don't let it go to a pit. Now, Mike, he helps me a lot with the dishes and the boys vacuum and help clean the bathrooms. They all help out, but I make sure that I keep it in order. And you need to be proud of your job.
You're doing a good job. Yeah, you're
Stop
doing a good job.
Giving into guilt. That's
Mhm.
ridiculous. That's mostly why we did this video
I was
today.
just going to say that's why we're doing this, because it's time that homemakers, stay-at-home moms, you don't need to feel guilty. I was so thankful that my husband was supportive in this, that in spite of what was going on in the world around me and that people snubbed me and treated me awful because I was a homemaker, he supported me. And, he gave me the confidence that I didn't have to feel guilty about what I was doing.
Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna have to skip the first batch of questions, Mike, so I hope there was nothing that okay, so let's see here. Judy loves the cookbooks. Diane Cookbooks Volume 1 and Volume 2. Thank you so much. Start with Volume 1. Easy recipes that get you in and out of the kitchen. 25% off right now. Dining on a Dime, gluten-free, dairy-free, right there. If you're gluten-free, dairy-free like me, it is not expensive. My grocery bill did not go up, and I don't cook anything extra. The breads and stuff are a little bit different, but my family eats them. So it's totally
Do we have anybody left on here?
edible foods. Yes, we do.
We do have somebody left.
Mary Ellen, our price book will be back in stock in probably early next week. It will not have the spiral, though. We're going to have to go back to a saddle stitch because of the post office. You can thank your local post office for that. Not you, Mary Ellen, but everyone's post office for that. Let's see. All right. Trying to get through some of them here. Kathy says, we are latchkey kids and I had no childhood. I care for my siblings, cook, laundry, clean. I raised them. I am a great mom because of it. And I got cheated and resented by my mom. Yeah,
I'll be honest. My husband, part of the problem that he had was the fact that he had a sister. His mom had a sister. His sister was born when he was 14. And his mom had worked all of his life. And when that sister was born, he had to hurry home from school, pick up his sister, and he basically raised her for about the first 5 years of her life. He had to clean the house, he had to cook, he had to take care of that sister. And things happened because of that affected him, that later on affected our marriage, And so I can understand what she's talking about. It can affect these kids very badly. And the parents are oblivious to it. His folks never in a million years would ever dream that had anything to do with what happened to him.
Let me go back to my questions, but this one says, should I feel guilty for being a homemaker without kids? Because I sure hear about it. No. You tell them to mind their own business.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I would phrase it. When somebody says something to you like that, you say, mind your own business. And guess what, honey? My husband gets sex whenever he wants. Because I'm not tired and exhausted and worn out.
Exactly. Yeah,
and he's happy for me to stay home and keep house.
We haven't mentioned that part, but it does affect the marriage too. It really does make a big difference in the marriage.
All right.
If it's done right.
Kathy, what difference would it make in our society if moms stayed home and raised their own children? Yes, exactly. Let's see. Olympia says, I cared for my daughter for 9 years after she developed neurological disorder until she passed and did daycare at home so I could pay her medical care. That is an extenuating
and so we
circumstance.
understand
That's
that.
what we were talking about. We totally understand that.
Those are cases. I had to work. I had to go to work when my husband left. But one thing too, now this isn't for you. This is totally off. I don't think you having a sick daughter, and I'm so sorry about your daughter, really, because that's a hard situation. But for my situation now, and for a lot of single moms, what happens is I worked at weird jobs, and you did the daycare, which was a good fit for you. But I would take weird jobs. I would take pay cuts. I would not get vacation. I would work over my lunch hour and over my 15-minute breaks if my boss would let me go home early so I could be there when the kids got home from school. I did some of the weirdest stuff just so I could make sure I could try to be there most of the time, during the day with them when they got home from school.
Send me the next one's Mike. Tiny Face is making a clean, cozy home with a hot meal in the oven is very attractive feminine trait. Yes, it is. Guys don't want to have to come home and figure out what to eat.
Yes, that's so true. So true.
Let's see. Tanya says, my friends would criticize me because I stayed home, but my kids are now glad that I did. I was the only parent glad I didn't have to work. Yeah.
And you know what? People talk about retirement. I've never worried about retirement. Why? Because I have kids and grandkids that love me so much that I know when I retired, if I needed anything, they would be all over me helping me. You don't factor that in your retirement plan. Now, I didn't need them to at this point, but that's more important. That really is. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, and talking about the kids' activities, we were talking to the pastor the other day. He said, the kids' activities have gotten so out of control. He said, we can't have small groups. We can't have get-togethers because parents are so involved all the time, spending so much time and so much money on kids' activities that they can't plan things like get-togethers and things like that. And it's really
the repercussions, what's happening by insisting they're in all the soccer t-ball or, having both of you work. It's a lot of repercussions.
Did you go to Walmart today? Mom did. I did not. She got a bunch of stuff.
I did.
Yep.
It was dark. I got up before the sun was up and it was freezing cold, but I did it.
There you go. I didn't because I really don't need anything right now. So I'm waiting for it to go 75 or 75% or 90% off is what I'm waiting for. Nancy says she's glad she's not there. She'd be hiding in the closet with me yelling, I think is what she's talking about. I'm sorry. I have had it.
We have dealt with this for so many years, and we've seen so many homes and lives destroyed that it's hard for us to stay calm over this.
We've been preaching this for 25 years, and it is time to get it together. It's time to get together.
And it's time somebody said something.
Well, we have been saying something, but now I'm saying it even. I'm not being kinder and gentler anymore. I'm not being kinder and gentler anymore. I'm sorry. But when you're working at home, when you have little kids at home and you're working and you're on the verge of collapse because your husband isn't getting a job that's good, that doesn't bring in enough pay, so you have to work. That's not okay. It's not okay. And I'm sorry, but it's not, especially when he's out blowing money on treats and snacks and eating out and those types of things. No.
Yeah, that was another thing I was going to say. I get so angry when I was thinking about that father that gave his bologna sandwich to his child, and how so many dads, well, I have to have this or I have to have that. I'm thinking, and here this dad gave his only meal away, and these other dads are saying, well, I can only drink this type of thing or I need that. But anyway, that's
Olympia, does anybody have a good remedy for coughing? So we have a couple of them. We have homemade cough syrup on our website, livingonadime.com. The recipe is also in our Dining on a Dime cookbook. You can also take and cook some onions and take warm onions, put them in a dish towel and put them on your chest. We have a kid that has, when he gets sick, it's a bad cough. And I mean, we're talking months of a bad cough.
Big, deep,
so believe me, I know all of
cough,
it.
Yeah.
Next one, Mike. Okay. All right. Mosaic, I love you guys, but I had to work. I had no choice. I could barely keep a roof over my head with medical bills. I was sick. My son was sick in hospitals. We are not talking about extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, we're not.
Somebody else said, well, I'm a single mom. Are you going to pay my bills for me? No. Stop your whining and just do what you can. This single mom sympathy, I've had enough of it too. I'm sorry. I have known plenty of single moms who have done just fine. And they're not whining and complaining and griping. They don't say how horrible their lot in life is. They don't go on and on about how they're a single mom and they need help with this and they need help with that. These single moms who keep vying for sympathy, get over yourself. This is the situation you're in, whether it was your choice or not. And do the best that you can.
The thing is with being a single mom or being something else, it's like everybody has something. You have a handicap, physical handicap. You're a single mom, you're a single dad, you have sick children, you have job losses, you have your house burned down. There's not a person out there within the sound of my voice, if they haven't already, they will in the future have some catastrophe happen to them. You've got to stop using those as excuses not to function in life and not to come up with a way to deal with things and to deal with your life without feeling the victim. The victim mentality is just horrible. It's not a strong person. It's a weak person. It's not a smart person. I mean, there's nothing good I can say about a victim mentality for people. So, step up to the plate. I was a single mom and I worked. I not only had bills to pay, I had tens of thousands of dollars of debt that wasn't even my personal debt. It was my husband's that I had to pay. But I never went on something like that and say, well, poor little old me. I never asked for help from anybody. And yet I still managed to pay off all those debts, to work. And I found jobs that I could work and still be there as much as possible with my kids. I would get up at 5 a.m. And I don't want this to sound like poor little old me either. I did what I had to do. I got up at 5 a.m. and started working. And then when the kids got up, I dealt with the kids. And then I would work late at night. You just do it. I'm still here to talk about it. It was no biggie. I mean, it was not easy, but that was life. A lot of other people had things worse. At least my kids were healthy at the time for for some of the years. But then they got sick, horribly sick. So much so Tara went on disability. You name it, I've been through there. So I have no sympathy for the victim mentality. I'm sorry.
Jay Moore, I couldn't have kids, but my husband made good money and still worked my tail off working around the house. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
And then you can spend time with each other in the evenings and weekends doing fun stuff. It's okay.
Get this. This talks about these situations. If you just read these 3 pages, you guys will find almost everything in there.
Desiree, never feel guilty for wanting your life in order. Michelle, do our cinnamon rolls in volume 1 actually have 7 cups of flour? Yes, but you can just half the recipe or quarter the recipe. You don't have to make the full recipe. So that was probably one of those recipes from grandma or whatever. I don't know. Kaylee's, do you have a video on how to create a budget? Yes. Do you believe in cash envelopes? Okay, not really, but if it helps you to do it that way, that's fine. But what it boils down to is you need to just stop spending your money you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So if it helps you to say, I have $100 this month for groceries, that's all I'm going to spend, and put it in an envelope, that's fine. You can go ahead and do it that way. But it boils down to pay your rent first, then your food, then your utilities, then pay your car maintenance so you can get to work, and your car gas. Notice I didn't say car payment, because you shouldn't have a car payment. You should have no car payments ever in your entire life, ever. And then pay the rest of your bills from there. Let's see. Send me the next ones, Mike. You know what? For those people who say that I should be that I'm being judgmental and I should preach with gentleness and kindness, let's see. Were they telling that to Jesus when he flipped over the money changers tables? I'm sorry. I'm not saying I'm the same as Jesus, but there are times when a little righteous indignation needs to come through, and you need to have a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is everybody's being so kind and gentle.
So politically correct.
So it's time to wake up, stop messing around, and get your act together, especially when it comes to your kids. My kids are almost all grown now. No, they're not all perfect, despite what Nan thinks.
I think they're perfect.
But I have been through almost, I have one left to get through high school, but I got 3 out of the 4 raised, and we did it while I stayed at home. We just did. We lived on $30,000 and $40,000 a year. So not that I could work anyway, but we did it, and it can be done. And so all these people whining and complaining about they have excuse for this and excuse for that, just stop. Figure out what you need to do and do it.
That's what so many people do now. It's one of my pet peeves is instead of figuring out how to take care of your problem and boldly getting up and bravely taking care of it and doing the best you can, I hear, well, the problem with that is I can't do that because, or the problem with that is, stop making your excuses. There shouldn't even be an excuse in your vocabulary. What you need to start doing and rethink, we've got to redo our wiring and our thinking is, what can I do to do the best I can and how to fix this situation? Come up with ideas. Stop wasting your brain space on excuses and getting upset about stuff and feeling sorry for yourself, and start thinking, how can I do it?
Well, and I missed it because I think it was somewhere else. I saw the question about, well, what if you have kids and you're not married? Get married. There's a reason why God created a man and a woman to create a family together, because you work together to raise the kids. This having kids before you get married, and then you wonder why you're having financial problems or your kids are a mess and you're stressed out and you're worn out.
That's one of the things where that's the consequences of doing something
Your decision.
Not in the right order or the right way. You have to accept the consequences for those things. No, God's not going to condemn you for the rest of your life if you ask forgiveness and that type of thing. But there are going to be circumstances that, that come from that has nothing to do with him forgiving you. That's something totally different.
Mike, can you put the free ebook When Queens Ride By? It's free for 24 hours. We'll have it go until 11:59 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday, November 2nd.
I know you think I'm crazy for pushing this, guys, but it really, don't you agree it's good? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Okay, let's see. Janeka, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Our pastor has said the same thing about the activities for kids. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is. The amount of activities that kids are in is just nuts. First of all, parents can't afford them. They can't afford the time. And then they wonder why everybody's stressed out and in such a bad mood all the time.
And you know what? I've known several people now, and it's not been too long ago. The story I told you about the 3-year-olds all being in games and everything. One of them went to his aunt, sobbing and crying. And he said, I don't want to do my soccer. I don't want to do it. And the aunt said, why don't you tell your mom and dad? Because it's going to hurt mom and dad. And these kids are crying at night when they get home from these games, and they're stressed out from the pressure. I mean, I don't like to be up in front of people trying to win a game and all the pressure that's, well, in T-ball, you know, they just play for fun. No, there's pressure put on them more than you realize. And these kids don't want to do it, but they want mom and dad's approval so bad. When I say you're their world, you're their world. And they'll do anything that they think you want, that dad wants, that mom wants them to do. And it's breaking their hearts. You're hurting them. You really are. And they don't want to tell you about it. So,
and we're not saying you can't ever work ever again the rest of your life.
No.
After your kids are grown or your kids have a school schedule that's, you know, conducive for you working, you know, a side job or something, or you could sell things you find at the thrift store on eBay, or you could refurnish furniture.
Use common sense.
I sold my plants and my garden vegetables. Those kinds of things are fine. That is perfectly
use
fine.
Common sense for your situation.
But when it interferes with taking care of your family, that's what we're talking about. And everybody wonders why our country's in the state that it's in. Well, this is why.
And start opening your eyes to recognize that there is a problem. If there's lots of stress, and there's stress between you and your husband, there's stress with the kids, then that's a telltale sign something's wrong. Don't just ignore it, and just don't think everybody's like that. You need to get that taken care of. It's like an open bleeding wound. And if you don't go right away and get that fixed or do something to fix it, it's going to get infected, gangrene, and you're going to have to cut that arm off, and it's going to be really bad. So if there's stress in your life, you need to stop, get with your husband, talk things over. And if you need to, talk things over with your kids after that, the two of you together. But you can tell when something's not quite right.
Mike, can you send me the last questions real quick? So while Mike's giving me the last question, guys, our Dining on a Dime cookbooks are 25% off right now in the link in the description below. But I want to say one other thing also about husbands. I've noticed another problem.
We're trying to cover husbands and wives both tonight.
That husbands, Chad, if you're watching, I'm not talking about you.
Chad, if you're watching, I'm not
or Melissa, if you're watching, we're not talking about Chad. Husbands will use the excuse, well, I'm going into ministry, so my wife needs to work.
Ooh.
No. Sorry, Charlie. And if there's anybody at my church that's in this situation, I'm really sorry. But no. If you cannot support your family in ministry without your wife working so that she can stay at home with the kids. Now, if you don't have kids and your wife and you are good with her working while you're getting your ministry started or something like that, I'm okay with that. But like we had some friends, they wanted to be missionaries. They were both working before they had kids. They got all their debt paid off, everything. They got themselves financially situated. So when they had kids and he decided to become a missionary, they were stable and everything was paid off. But we had someone email us one time. You can imagine how this went over, like Mike likes to say, went over like a fart in a spacesuit for Tara. She said, my husband has $250,000 in student loan debt because he is a lawyer and he has decided he wants to be a pastor now. We will not be able to pay off those debts on his pastor salary. That man is not qualified to be a pastor. He is not taking care of his family like the Bible specifically says he is supposed to do. That knocks him right there from being in charge of any type of ministry situation. Period. Secondly, churches. These churches that are hiring people like this, stop it. That is not a pastor qualification. And these wives, they're like, well, I have to work because my husband is in ministry or he works for a nonprofit. No, if you cannot pay your bills with that ministry's income for you, you need to find another job or get a second job.
Scripturally, if you think it's God's will for you to be doing something, God's going to take care of stuff for you. And he didn't design it for the wife to work. And so if you're truly doing God's will, he's going to figure out a way for you to pay for it. And you're not depending on God at this point. You're depending on your wife to take care of things for you. And so that goes against everything the Bible teaches. So how can you be a pastor if you're starting out first thing going against basic principles of the Bible?
Yep. Okay, the last batch of questions here. Diana says she made the scalloped potatoes recipe. They were so yummy. Thank you. Emily, I've been praying for strength and direction. Thank you very much. She says the Holy Spirit has lit a fire. Well, something's lit a fire.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Karen, life is hard and we need to buck up and do what was right. Yes.
Exactly. It's hard for everybody.
That's exactly it. And Tiny
Very
Face
well
says
said.
our culture is enabling. Yes.
Yeah.
Stop enabling everybody.
Stop enabling yourself with your excuses.
Coffee Cup says, sadly, adults can't handle the truth nor discipline, and they wonder why they're unhappy and their kids hate them. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Kaylee says people need to remember the world owes you nothing. Bounding the Badlands says people don't like hard truth. Preach it, Tara. I know. The pastor asked Mike and I to do a finance class for the church, and I said, I don't think you want me doing a finance class.
You won't have any members left.
There won't be anybody left speaking to
you. Want members to be coming into church.
Because the fact of the matter is, and especially Christians, they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
They really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And you can call me judgmental, you can call me whatever, but sorry, this is why our society has gone down the toilet because of this very situation. RLK says, how do you feel about a person remarrying while you still have young children? I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But make sure you're not marrying a twit.
Yeah.
Seriously. The man needs to treat your children as his own children. He needs to take care of your kids as well as his if he has them.
And the way he treats those kids, you'll instinctively as a mom know the way he treats them, whether that's good or bad, and you'll know that's the way he's going to treat you. And so that's a good gauge of what to do.
Now I will say, I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but I would say that if you're thinking about getting remarried, unless your spouse or his spouse, well, unless both of your spouses, but unless they've died or committed adultery, you are not free to remarry if you just divorce. If you just divorce just because you didn't get along, you're not free to remarry.
If you're
you're a Christian, you didn't say if you were or not, but I'm just putting that out there because that's another big problem in the Christian world. Did you get your half price Halloween candy? Yes, Mom did. I did not. Ada says, my girlfriend said Bible says women are supposed to bring in a paycheck. Is this true? No, it does not. She's taking Proverbs 31 out of context. It says, let me just hold on. 31. Let me just read it for you here because let's see. Let me try and find, actually, hold on. I'm trying to find hold on. Let me go to let me change it here from King James so everyone can, okay. Search. Okay. So let's see. Who can find a virtuous, capable wife? She is more precious than the rubies. Her husband can trust her and she will greatly enrich his life. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She finds wool and flax and busily spins it. She is like a merchant ship, bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn. So see, first thing she's doing is she's making clothes and cooking food for her family. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plans the day work for her servant girls. She goes to inspect a field
In
and
other words,
buys
like a
it.
business.
So she's taking care of her house first. And then she goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She is energetic and strong and a hard worker, and she makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. She is busy working, but she's putting her home before her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you bringing in some money. But if you are working, then that's not what you're doing. You're not putting your home before your family. Eva says, what if you get a divorce because your husband is abusive? You have to be punished by being lonely for the rest of your life because of his actions. So here's the thing. If your husband is being abusive to you, he has broken his marriage vows. Those marriage vows were to protect you and care for you as Christ cared for the church. Now, I don't know if other people will agree with me or not, but I would say no. Abuse does not necessarily mean that you should be able to get remarried.
But
so you need to study it for yourself and see what you think and pray about it. But
what I found percentage-wise, though, is abusive husbands. If you divorce and leave an abusive husband, he is going to do something to sin.
Yes.
He will not stay faithful to you. And so it won't take but a year, probably two, just very little time, where he will commit adultery or he will do something. And then that'll be perfectly fine.
So then you're set free
to
go ahead and remarry once he commits adultery.
Yeah, if they're abusive like that, I found the majority of the time, they usually go ahead and
if he's watching porn, that's adultery. If he's doing other things with other women, that's adultery.
So see, chances are pretty good you can remarry.
Let's see. Paula says women should not be pastor over church. No. Nowhere does it say a woman is to be a pastor, period. If you are in a church where a woman is a pastor, you need to find a different church because that is not a Bible-based church. Dining on a Dime cookbooks, guys, 25% off right now. Livingonadime.com. Volume 1 is the red one. Volume 2 is the blue one, and our gluten-free, dairy-free edition right now. And then 25% off. And then our undated planners, 400 pages, 365 days to help you stay-at-home moms get organized. Please visit us at livingonadime.com. If you need a free Bible, we give them for free. Mike put the link in there for you. We will see you guys next time. Have a great night.